Thank you. Well, he's treated as a sort of ambassadorial rock star because he did come down to the county where St. Patrick spent his 40 days and 40 nights on the mountain, to the home place of his own ancestors. And I have to say, Irish people recognise the true Irishness of our American ambassador. Both himself and his wife, Dina, have done extraordinary work in a short time. I have to say that on a piece of waste ground in Castlebar, which was transformed into a peace park, I think the ambassador was actually moved by laying a wreath at the memorial for those from that county who fought for America in different wars. These are things that make an impact in different ways on people. When I was elected Taoiseach, one of the first people I met was the chief executive of a very major American corporation, in a position where we had an extraordinary economic situation in the country. I said to him, well, what would you do if you were in my shoes? He said, the first thing you have to do is show them you're serious. American business likes a horizon, they like clarity, they like decisiveness, they like to know where the road ahead is insofar as you can point that out. And so, in recalling all our own ambassadors from all over the world, and calling in all of the European ambassadors, working really hard at restoring a sense of integrity and credibility of our nation and our people, I'm glad that with the United States, Ireland's still in a very special place. It works both ways. This is the fourth time I've had the privilege of addressing the Embassy's annual economic conference since the inaugural event back in 2012. As a country, we've moved substantially in these 4 years. Unemployment has fallen month after month consistently. Now it stands at 10%, down from a peak of 15%. We're now enjoying strong economic growth. The European Commission forecasts independently that Ireland will again be the strongest growth country in 2015 for the second year running. We see positive trends now in the hospitality sector, in retail sales, in consumer sentiment, all pointing to renewed confidence at home in the business sector and among the general public. Challenge for government is to secure that for the future and to point the road ahead for the next 5 or 10 years. We see positive trends in our tourism statistics, in the I suppose boosted now by the quantitative easing from the European Central Bank, in the sense of the extra benefit for visitors from America and indeed from Britain to come here. We want to focus to continue to expand our exports, to increase investment, to attract more people here to the country, so that we can continue to create jobs right across the land, ensure that the recovery is felt in people's ordinary lives. That's why I was glad to see the announcement just in the last few days of the first transatlantic cable in many years, first to make landfall in Ireland, which should be completed by the end of this year, from Shirley, New York to Killala, County Mayo, which will proceed on down to Galway, Limerick, Cork and on to France, which will revolutionise the capacity for connectivity and for major corporate interest, such as Apple have announced some time ago in Athenry with an 800 million investment there. The United States has been a tremendous friend and ally to Ireland over very many years, and in particular over the last 4 years, as we've worked with people here to reinvigorate our own economy and to get our country working again. Let me say a few words about the strength of that relationship and how innovation and creativity are actually crucial to its future. My most recent visit to America for the St. Patrick's Week confirmed to me that the message about Ireland's recovery is being heard loud and clearly across the United States, because from Georgia to Texas to Washington, in the business meetings that I've had, in the political meetings that I've had, in the Irish diaspora meetings we've had, we recognise that. There was enormous positivity about this country and about our position as the fastest growing economy in the European Union. And when you ask them, American investors themselves, when they point out what the critical difference between this country and others, it's not just the track record, and it's not just the technology, and it's not just the tax. When it comes down to it, it is the talent pool of creativity and innovation. And however high the bar is raised, young Irish coming through with a flexible education system, working closely with business already, the high-tech sector, the pharmaceutical sector, financial services, with the universities and the colleges of technology, it gives our young people both an enormous challenge and enormous opportunity that they're well able to meet. I have to say that I was impressed and heartened and encouraged by the resourcefulness of the Irish people in America to make this system work both ways. Now, Ambassador spoke about the connectivity with the American political process. We sat in the White House with the President and his principal people, among which Ambassador O'Malley, and we discussed the EU-US trade partnership, transatlantic. When Ireland held the presidency of the Union in the first 6 months of 2013, with approval from the European Parliament to start this process, and President Obama at the G8 summit in Fermanagh gave the authorization for those chapters to start, and they've worked well. But we discussed the reality of making it, bringing it to a conclusion, and the perception oftentimes is that they don't want to make it work, and that the Europeans were reluctant to put the difficult issues on the table, and that the Americans were reluctant to put the difficult issues on the table. And what we agreed was that the simpler issues and the more difficult ones should be tabled by both sides, because it would be important that this agreement should be concluded, if at all possible, in this year of 2015, as the American election process kicks in after that, and would make it more difficult. I think there's a willingness with good teams, both from the States and from Europe, to deal with these issues with the prize of a couple of million jobs either side of the Atlantic, difficult though some areas of the discussions will be. So insofar as assuring the President of Ireland's contribution to this, we made it perfectly clear that we will work diligently with our European colleagues and our American connections to get this across the line. I'm very optimistic about the continued strength of interest in Ireland from the United States. So many US companies see this country as their preferred destination to access the European market of 500 million people. Last month's American Chamber report contained an extraordinary statistic, which Eamon is well aware of, which illustrated this point. Total US investment to Europe in the first 9 months of 2014 fell almost by 20% compared to 2013 figures. But over the same period, United States investment flows to Ireland rose by almost 42%, which speaks for itself of the extraordinary relationship between our countries. So, US stands out as our largest merchandise and services trading partner. Irish goods exports alone total more than 20 billion in 2014. More and more Irish companies are breaking into the US market. There are now over 340 Irish companies in the US, and they employ 80,000 people across 50 states. Last year was a record year for tourists from the US, when the numbers increased by 13%, or close to 1.2 million people, far ahead of the overall growth in the US outbound market to Europe. And as we look to those enormous successes, there is no doubt that creativity, innovation, passion and interest are partly stimulants for Americans to want to come here. Next year we have the centenary of the 1916 Rising as part of the decade of commemorative events from right out to 2022. And we hope that in an inclusive fashion, taking everybody into account, that the interest that is now being stimulated in the US will mean more people come here, and from an Irish diaspora point of view, that these issues are commemorated in a sensitive and appropriate fashion as well. I know that Kevin O'Malley, as ambassador, has made the creative arts a major part of his agenda, with the aim of facilitating economic and strategic partnerships between young people on both sides of the Atlantic, and why not? This is a reflection of the fact that the creative sector itself is a major part of the Irish economy and a significant employer across the country, accounting indeed for thousands of jobs with potential for so many more. It's also an acknowledgement of the place of the arts is one of Ireland's greatest calling cards in the United States and indeed around the world. It's a major attraction to tourists to visit the places which inspired such great literature, art and music. I recall asking Her Majesty when she came here a few years ago on the first official visit of a reigning monarch in 100 years, what did she think was the outstanding legacy that Britain gave to Ireland? And she said, well, I suppose you could say the language. I said, that may well be true, and see what we've done with it in 100 years, with Yeats and Beckett and Shaw and Heaney and all of these wonderful creative writers. But you see, our creative output reflects how we see ourselves also, and it defines how others actually see us. And that's why the creative arts will be central as to how we commemorate the centenary of 1916 in the United States as part of our Ireland 2016 programme. And there will be a major event in Washington in the Kennedy Centre. And I had the privilege of announcing that and a series of other programmes during my recent visit there. Success in the 21st century economy relies on nurturing an ecosystem that's able to build creativity among our people, that fosters innovation and that supports entrepreneurship. Talent is at the heart of innovation, and the role of the education system is absolutely crucial in producing motivated and engaged, critical, creative thinkers. Education is no longer just about imparting facts, but developing lifelong skills. Any student now has access to literally mountains of information. The role of the teacher is a counsellor, a guider, a direction finder, a determinant of what are the priorities, where the talent and the flair of the student can be stimulated to become even more important. And one of the reasons that the government has put so much emphasis on reforming the junior certificate is the opportunity that it presents to move away from what we had when I went to school of the rote learning, and present new opportunities for people to think behind the numbers, to understand how their imaginations can be stimulated, and that innovation and provide the foundation for entrepreneurial skills. It was Einstein, I think, that said that imagination is the greatest force, and it's the only thing that actually limits us as a country with the best demographics of any in Europe of the next 25 years. So our further and our higher education systems are critical to producing graduates with the skills to drive that innovation and that entrepreneurship. And I have to say, and Ambassador will agree with this, when you go and visit many of the bigger plants around the country, and you talk to the people who are driving those machines, who are creating those robotics, the engineering base gives an opportunity for 1,000 different varieties of jobs. And it's extraordinary how those young people, young men and young women, can say, here's a challenge, can we meet this challenge? Can we bring it to the next level? And as those who are here will know, it's when that challenge can be met that the real satisfaction and the expression of that creativity comes to the fore. Obviously, international outlook among graduates is vital for graduates in an exporting economy. Why wouldn't it be? That's why we place such a value on having that international mix, that engagement, that interaction with our higher education system, and the US is a crucial part of that. According to figures from the US, 8,000 US students choose to study abroad for some time in this country every year. And per capita, we attract more American students than anywhere else in the world. We were also the first government to sign up as a partner in the US efforts to double the number of American students studying overseas under what we call the Generation Study Abroad program. Now, in respect of research and development, our strategic investment in research has also underpinned the development of our innovation ecosystem. We don't have the money or the resources to invest in everything, so we've decided where the priorities actually lie. And in the past 2 years, government in partnership with industry has invested very well, invested over €500 million with industry in 12 Science Foundation Ireland research centres in high-tech and strategic areas of economic importance to the country. So our innovation research and funding is a key part of our relationship with the States. Nearly 20 research and development partnerships between Ireland and the US span a range of high-tech areas, including nanoscience and engineering, telecoms, energy and sustainability. Actually, just this week, we sent to Ambassador, was in a little place in Deerfield Street, 15 employees, secured the largest venture capital investment of any on the planet over the last 2 years. We're going to move to 100 employees. The top 1 percentile of engineering potential will work in this plant. And on a 6 millimeter square chip, they put 140 million transistors in the nano world, which will give eyes to every computer and every other system that you can think of, which I know that Intel and Eamon here will have a deep understanding about. That's going to revolutionize the way business is done in hundreds of millions of ways over the next period, and they're based right here in the heart of Dublin. Just yesterday we had Zalando from Germany making the biggest investment in research and innovation in terms of the fashion world to make it personal to so many people. And they've come from Germany to here because they too recognize the creative, innovative forces that are at work here. So we're also collaborating with our colleagues in the States and Europe in areas like the marine, including the implementation of what we call the Galway Statement, which established the Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance between Canada, the US, Spain, Portugal, France, Britain and Ireland, examining the Atlantic. It won't be finished before the next election, but it's well underway anyway. Our investment in science and research is paying off as inward investment moves up the value chain and becomes more focused on high-end research and development. Our share of US affiliate research and development in Europe rose to 5.5% in 2012, which is up substantially from where it was in 2000. A key part of the IDA strategy to 2019 is to increase cumulative research and development spend in its client companies by up to 20%. So I'm delighted to see that next month the American Chamber here in Ireland and the Royal Irish Academy will host the US Ireland Research Innovation Awards to showcase this exciting dimension of our relationship. So Ireland also has an increasingly strong startup and entrepreneurial culture. And that's something that's always been evident in the United States, something we've tried to push very strongly here for young people in particular to set up companies, become involved in companies, and if it goes down, so what, start again. There is no doubt that as a small economy, our companies need to export to grow so that they can develop world-leading strengths and capabilities to compete globally. I know there are people here from the agri and the food sector. This is an extraordinary story of Ireland developing here. I know that both BIA and the agri sector in general see enormous potential with the Chinese market, the Japanese market, the American market open to Irish beef in the last 15 months, the potential with developments like Glanbia and Kerry in terms of the milk opportunities and our food producing capacity to feed so many more people in a world which is changing so rapidly and which will increase to over 10 billion by 2050. So there are particular supports and investments for high potential startups, companies that are developing new or substantially improved technologies or services that really have the capacity to grow. And creativity has to be at the heart of that agenda, and that's why we are celebrating the year of the design. Why not challenge those creative minds to produce the goods? So one of the government's aims has been to highlight how the very best of Irish design across architecture, across fashion and industrial design can drive job creation, can grow exports, can increase competitiveness, and can send out the signal of Ireland's reputation continuing to rise. As I said, I was down in Austin, Texas during the St. Patrick's Week at the South by Southwest Interactive Festival in Austin, Texas, probably the biggest tech festival in the world. And I saw it firsthand, some of the creative Irish startups looking to break into the American market in areas like games and music, social media and data analytics. In fact, in saying to the governor down there, telling him about Ireland, we were able to say that 4 signatories to the Texan Declaration of Independence in 1836 were Irish, and that 11 Irish were shot at the Alamo, and the tricolour flies in the chapel in San Antonio. And he said, I wasn't aware of that. I said, well, you are now, Governor. And he said, well, I'll show you something else. And he brought out the creative force that drives him, which is the chef in the mansion in Austin, Texas, whose name is Pat Gannon, and he's here from Dublin. So I just want to say that it's a privilege to be here. We will continue to work with Ambassador O'Malley and our American colleagues to build the partnership for prosperity between Ireland and the US. I think that today's conference illustrates the enormous variety of our relationship, the diversity of our collaborations, and the extraordinary potential to create positive benefits for citizens on both sides of the Atlantic. So I would like to thank you again, Ambassador O'Malley, for the invitation to attend here, to wish you all the very best for the rest of the day's programme on what is a God-given day in one of the most beautiful locations here in Dublin. You're all very welcome. Thanks very much indeed.